is a totally different conversation. And this is why we are delving into this particular panel conversation. And I would like to start off with the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. Probably let's start off from the point of seeing your involvement and what is readily available in place, whether for smallholder farmers, because that is what we're talking about today, that's our biggest point of conversation. What processes do you have in place for irrigation or initiatives for the smallholder farmers to be able to support agricultural production?
Good morning to you all. I'm Engineer Waneloba, as was introduced earlier. Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries is actually the lead agency in ensuring irrigation and mechanization as a way of increasing productivity and production. Currently, MAIF supports irrigation in many different ways. We have public investment programs that support irrigation, small-scale irrigation in activities like programs like UGIFT, which was mentioned earlier severally, things like projects like the Uganda Climate Smart Agriculture Transformation Program, which is carrying out a lot of activities towards supporting irrigation. They come in different forms, whether solar powered, whether construction of storage facilities through which water gets available, like valley dams and valley tanks, drilling of using groundwater. The sources of water are various, but the support to do irrigation is there as part of public investment programs. Then we have the public-private partnerships where we work closely with providers, equipment providers, to do the supplies, to make sure the irrigation equipment is available, to make sure the installation services exist, and to make sure there is technical support and training towards irrigation. We also have extension activities. We have a large expanse of extension workers around the country. Whether they are doing the actual extension work the way we would love them to do is a matter for our discussion.
Okay.
But they exist. Working together with the local governments, we ensure that extension workers are available in all the districts to support these activities related to irrigation, take the information to the ground, get feedback, and see how the technical support can be provided to the different irrigation initiatives and other agricultural production initiatives. Then we try to ensure quality assurance and regulation. And we do pre-qualification of providers for irrigation equipment and services around the country. And this pre-qualification tries to ensure that there are guidelines, there is technical support, there is capacity, and there is ability to do operation and maintenance, which is usually a big challenge. Because the capacities within the communities are very low, and that will go to part of that comes up as a challenge, but these are things that we are trying to ensure that capacity exists within the communities in terms of technicians, in terms of the suppliers being able to give after-sale services and etc. And mainly, we are trying to focus on the integration of irrigation with agricultural mechanization. Because if we are talking about increasing production and productivity, irrigation will ensure you can grow crops in all year round, okay? But that alone in itself cannot ensure that our production really increases. That you could increase per the small areas, the 3% that we are talking about. But to be able to take a lot more of the arable land available into production, then Ministry of Agriculture is also working on irrigation alongside agricultural mechanization so that the different value chains increase in terms of the amount of land. Of course, we have issues with the fragmentation, but we are trying to ensure we take on groups models so that the mechanization can help open the land a bit better, have value post-harvest handling and storage, and then value addition as part of the efforts by the ministry to ensure that irrigation is as effective as possible. And finally, we are setting up what we have called, we are re-establishing, those days they used to be called tractor bases, but we are calling them the regional mechanization centers. We see these regional mechanization centers, they are supposed to be 19 all over the country, but currently we have 5 which are starting to get functional. And in these regional mechanization centers, we want them as a center of excellence where people can come if they want anything to do with irrigation, if suppliers want to establish supply centers, they can come to the mechanization center and do demonstration plots, show how the various equipment on the market works. We get agronomists and other people to explain to the people what value chains are better off getting into. Because you can choose what to irrigate and you realize that there is no cost benefit in irrigating a particular crop. But yet, if you changed and worked together with the rest of the next farmers, grew one crop which has more value, then the irrigation would be more appropriate than just choosing to irrigate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Engineer. I'll definitely be getting back to you. I'd like to cross over to the Ministry of Water and Environment. When we talk about water, first thing, of course, we are thinking it's a natural resource, and that is what exactly it is. And then we're thinking about the availability of the water for production, but also sustainable use, because some of the water sources like swamps in some areas have been reclaimed. The forests have been cut down. When we remember our science, the relationship between trees and production of rain. So how are you as the Ministry of Water and Environment, what are you doing to increase availability of water for agricultural production? And how also do you think we can ensure effective irrigation and sustainability of irrigation for our smallholder farmers? We saw the numbers very high, up to 80%.
Thank you for that. Once again, I'm Dr. Jobe Kolo with the Ministry of Water and Environment. The ministry is undertaking several interventions to ensure there is equitable and reliable access to water. Currently, we have constructed, since the early 2000s, we've constructed over 500 small strategic reservoirs, which has enabled access to water for livestock, for irrigation. We have also addressed this issue through strategic dams, medium and large-scale dams. We've constructed over 22 reservoirs across the country. So this allows water-stressed regions to access this water. In some cases, we have further developed these water sources for irrigation. So the storage reservoir then provides water during the dry season, and the farmers are able to irrigate. We have rehabilitated irrigation schemes such as Unwen irrigation scheme. Using the water stored in these reservoirs, we've been able to irrigate over 6,600 hectares just in Unwen irrigation scheme. We have planned a number of interventions. As you can see, about 20% of the target under NDP4. We plan to address this through one farm initiatives. So we have equipment where farmers come to our regional offices and apply. They apply for this through PPPs, where they fund part of the investment, and then we use our equipment to construct these these on-farm storage reservoirs, particularly within the cattle corridors, but we're expanding this with support from the government of Uganda. Then to ensure sustainability, we are working with the district local governments, we are working with Ministry of Agriculture to support training of artisans, local artisans, such that there is access, even where we have established these small-scale irrigation systems for these farmers, that they're able to acquire equipment, they're able to acquire skilled personnel to fix minor issues. We also endeavor to get the private sector involved by introducing these farmers to suppliers. So I think that answers, hopefully that answers your question.
All right, sure. 42 reservoirs will we be seeing much more scale, for example, coming in from the ministry? Because I am thinking, would those be adequate as is, or do we have a plan of expanding these reservoirs in terms of numbers?
Yes, we have very ambitious plans to expand. Unfortunately, we are financially constrained. This is, but government has been committing more and more money towards this. So yes, we do have plans to do this.
All right, good enough. Ministry of Finance is actually well represented here, and in the directorate that speaks to water. Let me first go to Davis and Shadlev. As a private sector player, because we know and we've always been reminded that Uganda is a private sector-led economy. So what kind of technologies are you promoting to the smallholder farmers? Because one of the other issues highlighted, whether in this conversation or even outside, has always been about the farmers being able to afford the affordability of these technologies. So what are the technologies that you're promoting, and what financing modalities are you using to provide these technologies to the smallholder farmers? Because most of the times, many of them cannot do a one-time payment. They probably need a bit of installment packages to afford. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Once again, my name is Britton Kananura. I'm an irrigation engineer at Davis and Shatcliffe. Just to give you a brief about Davis and Shatcliffe, it's a water and energy solutions company that is only 20 years shy from making a century of providing water and energy solutions for Africa. And as we mark 8 years, part of our ambitions is to be able to be key players in transforming and improving livelihoods. And I believe this is an equally important occasion. We've been able to do that through providing sustainable, effective and affordable irrigation solutions and water pumping solutions. So coming to your question, Mildred, some of the technologies we've come up with to support the smallholder farmers. Like you said, it's a game of costs. So we come up with designing irrigation kits, portable kits that suit the smallholder farmers, the subsistence farmers. We come up with kits ranging from all the way from half an acre or a quarter an acre all the way up to 3 acres. And these are usually designed to cater for the problems that we encounter while doing surveys, because as Davis and Shatcliffe, when we're providing these solutions to these farmers, when a farmer comes to us, we don't just listen to what they want and we provide. No, we want to go down to the ground, get to know what they are planting, because to a layman, irrigation is just watering crops, but there is much more to that. If it is used wrongly, then it could as well affect production, because I will give an example. A farmer will come when they want to do, they may be planting half an acre of tomatoes, and they'll tell you, I need a pump and a sprinkler. But as a provider, you should be with the right engineers to know. These sprinklers come with nozzles. Some nozzles are used when you've just transplanted. Others are not supposed to be used at flowering stage. So what I say that it could affect production. For example, someone will subject a nozzle that is supposed to use at planting stage, at flowering stage, and in the end, the flowers will drop, and that affects production. So it is way beyond that. Some of the other technologies we've come up with is we encourage use of organics. Some organic fertilizers, they help in reducing irrigation frequencies. So in turn, that helps us to save water. So for areas that are affected by water scarcity, we have to come up with such technologies. We have to come up with such ideas. We encourage them to use these organic fertilizers so that they are able to reduce on the irrigation frequencies and make sure that the little water that they have is used effectively. Yes. Some of the other technologies that we've come up to cater for smallholder farmers is introducing alternative irrigation solutions. Especially, we know that different irrigation systems, for example, drip irrigation is quite expensive. It may not be affordable by a smallholder. So we come up with substitute solutions. We engineer solutions. For example, we came up with the drag hose irrigation systems, whereby instead of someone having a large network of pipes going around with drip irrigation, yes, it's the most effective, but in this case, we are looking at how do we cater for someone who can't afford that. And we're able to do drag hose irrigation systems whereby you have hydrants, just a few hydrants within the garden, and you have a prime mover at the water source, and you're able to irrigate your crops. It may be hectic, but in turn, it saves a lot. You'll not be at risk of losing your crops when these persistent droughts come.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Breton. Actually, when you talked about some of the alternatives away from just irrigation, reminded me of a lot of conversations around use of biochar, hydrogels, but still, one, the conversation is always around the effect of some of those. Two, the soil, because at the end of the day, we're looking at productivity from irrigation. So what's the effect on the soil, the microorganisms and everything? But also, secondly, it still goes back to the bigger conversation, affordability of even those alternatives. This is where I'd like to bring in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mugaga. What are some of the funding modalities that you brought in as the Ministry of Finance to be able to get to the smallholder irrigation technologies?
Hello?
You're on.
I'm on. Okay. Thank you so much, Mildred, and thank you so much for inviting the Minister of Finance to be part of this discussion. Irrigation basically is part of a broader financing by government to a number of programs. And to situate it well, we have to first look at how much are we allocating towards the different programs that actually feed into irrigation. I have my colleagues here from agriculture, water. If you look at the programs where they fall, we've allocated, I think this year's budget. This year's budget we have 1.8 trillion going to the agro-industrialization program. We also have close to 366 billion going to the other natural resources program. Now, part of this money actually goes to irrigation. If you look at the next year's budget, this has grown up by close to 25%. We have around 2.2 trillion going to the agro-industrialization, and for the right reasons, because government has designed a strategy to grow its the economy by tenfold by 2040. The tenfold growth strategy identifies agro-industrialization as one of the ATMs, the anchor for developing our economy tenfold. So by default, agriculture is at the center stage, water for production and irrigation are at the center stage. So we are going to see more money going to areas that basically look at productivity and So we can't leave out water for production. Now, as government, we have a number of ways of investing in agriculture and irrigation in that case. And we have a combination of models. The national budget, I've talked about the national budget through the program. We also are looking at our external partners, concessional financing from the likes of the World Bank, ADB, IDB. I know you know a number of, they have talked about some of the programs that we've had, or projects. We've had, I think the recent one, Nexus Green, $90 million. We're actually working on a new one. Recently, the Minister of Finance at a technical level, we've approved a new project that is going to be around 160 million. I don't know the figure, my colleague might know the figure, right? So we are emphasizing irrigation in that regard. And we think by blending concessional loans and grants, we actually can get to the point where Ministry of Water can avail those different investments that they've been talking about. Then I think we also have, for example, the agricultural credit facility in the bank and other credit schemes. And I think ECCL, we also have investments towards solar, but solar geared towards farmers. So these interventions, we're actually taking them through the existing banks. A number of banks are part of these programs. We have microfinances also for the smaller investments, but then also SACCOs. We're going down up to the SACCO level. Then we think that also there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to public-private partnerships and government working with other private players to have either mass irrigation or even small irrigation aggregated. I think that's also another way that government is trying to make sure that we finance irrigation, and then also we also finance the attendant investments that actually are going to make irrigation sustainable. Because you can't talk about irrigation if you're not investing in wetlands. And there's a lot of investments that have gone to wetlands because these are catchments. They help, basically help on the sources where the water is coming from. We've had the GCF, you've seen some of the investments across the country where we've been looking at how do we demarcate wetlands to make sure that people don't go in and then we lose a good resource. But then also there's a number of interventions in our protecting our forests, and then also having new alternative energies for people not to go into areas that actually spur availability of water for irrigation.
Okay.
Thank you.
And looking at the financing, I know that government is doing quite well in a bit, but still the finances may not be able to match up the need. And we see that a lot of that financing is also coming in from our development partners. But if we do an introspection and come back at our tenfold growth agenda, which you talked about, if we say it's agro-industrialization, that means we'll need to have the inputs that will be processed. My question goes to the challenges that you have witnessed that may be affecting the financing, but also the uptake of the small irrigation facilities that we have available. What could those be?
Thank you so much. Obviously, accessing financing comes with a number of challenges. And we want as government to actually raise enough resources for most of our planned activities. But obviously you have to do it, but we have to be cognizant of the cost. Because we have set in our debt management strategy certain levels. We shouldn't go up above 50% of our GDP. So those are some of the challenges. Accessing affordable financing externally is one of the challenges that we face. But we look at innovative financing now. We're actually bringing in innovative financing. The opportunities like, for example, carbon markets. Carbon markets makes, for example, irrigation cheaper for the end user. An investment that would have cost maybe $10 can actually go down up to $5 if you design a project aligning it to carbon markets, because there are anticipated benefits for the investor in future. They're going to sell these credits and then get a return. So they are willing to cut the cost, the price of the instrument or the irrigation facility to half, because they anticipate more revenue coming in. So we need to work knowing that these are opportunities that we can actually use to actually increase on the irrigation, but then also bring down the costs. And specifically for the farmers, I think what we've seen, and my colleagues can have more information, I think the upfront cost of these irrigation systems is one of the challenges actually they face.
Okay.
And then the cost of credit, the end users. If let's say, like for Uganda Electricity Company, Credit Company Limited, these credit that they give to the financial institutions to lend to the end user, still that cost is high for the farmers. So I think we need to look at how do we manage that cost, and as I said, we have to look at innovatively bringing in elements to do with Then the other very important challenge I look at is technology transfer. Now, you can have the money, you can have the need and the desire to irrigate, but there are new technologies out there that actually make it very efficient. The things he has been talking about, that, you know, some nozzles shouldn't be for flowering. Now there should be technology that actually is going to help us, so the farmer doesn't have to bring a new nozzle and put there, because it becomes very hectic. So we need to harness those different technologies from out there, and then make sure that they help us, first of all, as technology goes up, cost goes down. So we get affordable technology, but then also we also help manage the effects of not knowing what to do as farmers. Our farmers don't know what to do. That's the truth. Okay. We need to help them. Thank you.
Very, very, very interesting. And when we were talking about money, I did see my friend Julius Mukunda from CS Bank looking keenly, so he can tell you, remove this money from here, let's put it here. True. But let me come back to my to Ministry of Agriculture as well. In your experience, because you are going ahead with implementation of some of these irrigation technologies, I'd also like you to speak to what your experience is with the uptake. Or have the farmers been able to take through everything? Are they embracing? Or what more needs to be done? And also, how do we get to scale up and make that sustainable?
Thank you very much. I like listening to finance talking because it is always about the things we like to hear about money. I would like to put it this way. If we are talking about being an agricultural country at this moment, irrigation should now be a lifestyle. It shouldn't be a choice because actually the climate and environment do not allow it to be a choice anymore. We are talking about the farmers having uptake. The costs are quite high for the farmers, irrespective of whether, even when Davis and Shatliff tells us that we now have drag horse, which is quite cheap. Yeah, it reduces the cost, reduces the efficiencies, and still remains expensive. We have been in discussions with Ministry of Water, and we are thinking, supposing we had maybe an independent irrigation fund, and this speaks to finance, because if we are an agricultural country employing 70% of the population, and then we are talking about 3% of the arable land that can be used in long dry spells, it is not funny at all. The financing, again, there's an agricultural fund, The banks have some access to finance. The banks need collateral. How do we help our farmers own the land? If we are talking about group formation as a strategy in Ministry of Agriculture, but wherever you go, if they are to access finance, the banks will be here, they will tell us there is finance, there is partnership, there is what? They want collateral. The farmers cannot be able to present anything as collateral because even the land which is available is actually not owned technically, because if you can't show demonstration that you own the land, then it is difficult to present it as collateral. And then there is basically risk and perceived risk. There are people, I had a friend of mine in Bukedia district. He was advised that it is very good to do ginger. And when he went and expanded massively, installed irrigation systems, the first year he did very well. And the second year, I think he lost more than he had invested from the first year. Why? The production was so high, there was nowhere to sell. How do we ensure that people attach value through this irrigation that they are paying for? Because if you've gotten a loan, even if it is interest-free, then if you don't have the right market, or if the prices are so fluctuating, then it means you're not going to be able to sell, but even the bank is not eager to give you the credit when you don't have such guarantees. The equipment and spare parts, how do we work together to ensure that what is on the market? I'm told there's a funny word that comes out everywhere, that in Uganda you always have to have the unaffordable good products from Davis and Shatley, for example, but you also have people who will come and tell you that we have a better product, which is always fake, and you pay very not cheaply because it turns out more expensive. How do we protect the market against that? How do we help with the land fragmentation? Because we are talking about improve. The best way to gain is if you do it on a larger scale, if you work together to reduce the initial costs. How do we work together?
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you talked about working together, and this is where I would like to go to the Ministry of Water. I know that currently government is carrying on the program-based approach, not the silo-based, I would say, which was sector-based. And this, when we talk about water for irrigation, everyone involved in the sector literally has to come in place. So how best do you think you as the Ministry of Water can work together with the other ministries, whether it's local government or MAIF? Because if we are targeting smallholder farmers, they are at the grassroots. How do you work together to provide the water for irrigation to these smallholder farmers in a sustainable way, in a much more affordable way?
Thank you for that. So, like you've mentioned, government is promoting the program approach. Ministry of Water, particularly the Department of Water for Production, is under the agro-industrialization program, which is hosted by Ministry of Agriculture. In so doing, this program-based approach encourages us to work together. So even during the development of projects, we bring on board members from Ministry of Agriculture. We also bring on board the local governments. In so doing, we're able to develop an integrated project that allows us to deliver services to the farmers in a collaborative way. We also try to bring in the farmers such that we don't just bring technologies to these farmers that may not be suitable for them.
Okay, that's very important. Breton, let me come back to you before I engage Mr. Kakuro David as well for some extra engagement with the panel here. We've talked about the technologies, but I think the better the technologies become, the higher the price. And yet, as Maif did clearly say, I think it's better that as the technologies go up, we are having the prices coming down. Also not having to burden the farmers with, okay, if you're flowering, use this nozzle. If you're planting, use this nozzle. If it is fruiting, use this nozzle. At the end of the day, also when you talk about drug horse, I was thinking about the risk that one of the panelists talked about. We have telephone farmers. Have you watered? yes, madam, we have watered, and then when you go, you find everything else being able to dry. I would like to come to you on the issue of how best you think we can improve access, especially when it comes to the affordability question for the smallholder farmers.
Thank you.
And you also do follow up, because that's one thing for you to get me the technology, but coming through to help the farmers get the information as was being talked about.
Okay, thank you. Talking about working together, I'll hint on one program that I've personally gone ahead to carry out farmer group trainings in northern Uganda. It's a program called Northern Uganda Farmer Livelihood Improvement Program. I think it's funded by jointly by JICA and MAIF. It's a very interesting program, and I believe it could be a good approach for all the programs that maybe the ministry is planning to implement. The farmers are clustered in groups, and then they are trained about wet season farming and dry season farming, and then they call upon providers to carry out demonstrations first on how the irrigation works. So talking about that hardship of changing nozzles and all that, I think it all starts with the trainings. Once the farmers are comfortable with the irrigation system through these demonstrations, I carried out over 60 trainings for farmer groups that are in over 30 numbers in each group. I don't remember a part of northern Uganda that I didn't browse. So that means it's effective, and it can create awareness about irrigation, and it can help farmers be aware about the irrigation technologies. Then talking about the accessibility, I'll talk about the financing first. First of all, we've put up special discounts, just like any other solution provider would be encouraged. If there are organized groups, it could be like Emyoga or any farmer groups, there should be special discounts or special prices put aside for such groups of individuals, so that they are able to afford these with the little that they get from the government. Then also an equally similar program that we have, like the PAYGO, we have the Day Lipa. The Day Lipa is, apparently we're trying to structure it here in Uganda. Our counterparts in Nairobi are already doing it. The farmers acquire an irrigation system or an equipment, and then like my colleague said, the down payment, honestly, sometimes is not affordable by the farmer. So they pay a certain percentage, could be 40% or 50%. Then as the season goes on, they pay and complete the payment with time, depending on the agreements that we have. So that's something I would encourage fellow providers to also take up, and also the available financial partnerships. They talked of Centenary Bank. We have one running with Housing Finance Bank. Could help farmers access loans, farming loans, to be able to acquire these irrigation solutions. Maybe some of the challenges that we experience is the insufficient knowledge, especially by some extension workers, because sometimes you go to a certain local government and you're trying to, put out the irrigation solutions, and the person who goes direct to these farmers are usually the extension workers, but they know mostly about the agronomy part. They have insufficient knowledge with irrigation. So one of the other things I would encourage is organizing trainings for these extension workers, especially about irrigation and how important it is. It is really important, and these trainings are usually carried out free of charge. For example, we don't charge for farmer group trainings. If there is any organized group, we always come up and carry out comprehensive training. One other thing I could talk about is the cost-benefit analysis. a farmer has to know, why am I investing in irrigation? Because some of them just know that I have to do irrigation specifically to stop my crops from drying, but they overlook the fact that when you're doing irrigation, you're able to do farming across the whole year. You're not basing on any season, because you are creating your own rainfall, and you're able to carry out irrigation throughout the year. And another challenge is with the water source. To be honest, the nature of the water source determines the cost of irrigation. I'll give an example. People with access to surface water, I would say rivers, swamps, or a lake nearby, or a dam. When one has surface water, irrigation becomes cheaper because you're not limited to what water pumping system or solution to give. But if a farmer comes and they says, I have a shadoof is a shallow well. Pumping from a shallow well, you can't use any surface pump. You will require a submersible pump, and submersible pumps are usually much more costly. I'll give an example with the U-Gift program. We could have farmers come and then talk about the 25% paid for the ones using the solar, and then the 75% paid by the farmers, or the ones using petrol or diesel engines. You realize the cost of, for example, 1 acre irrigation system using solar-powered irrigation system is more expensive than someone using an engine to do 3 acres. So when you give them that kind of comparison, most farmers always ended up going for the 75%, because he may be starting with 1 acre because that's what he can afford, but this engine pump gives him an option that he can, expand with time. So those are some of the challenges that we've encountered, Mildred. Yeah.
Very, very true. And I think those are very practical challenges that we would need to find solutions for. This is where I bring in Engineer Francis from IF on how now we are trying to integrate the irrigation technology provision with our conventional extension system. Because as clearly as you can see, even from the private sector player side, it is not just about buy, install, and that is it. There is continuous support that needs to be done, which the private sector player may not be able to. They may give you the preamble of it, give you the technology, and they will leave it at that because there's so many others to do. Then government has to be able to come in. Do we have this interoperability between the conventional system of having extension workers with the irrigation conversation?
Thank you very much. One, with Davis and Shatliff telling us about the free trainings and capacity building, I think those are some of the creative ways in financing some of the things we are unable to do as government, or we can't prioritize at the moment. So thank you very much. I would like to think aloud. If people go around the country, and we've installed irrigation systems, we have solar powered installations, pumps, we have solar panels. One of the biggest risks we have currently, both private and public investments, is stealing of this equipment. Now I always, there's a lot of money spent in trying to get them in place, then a lot of effort in trying to ensure that they are not stolen. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Just food for thought. For me, I always tell my colleagues that it is actually a good thing, because it means the demand exists extensively and everybody is aware that with this we can have a solution that helps us get better. So what we should plan is how to effectively get these things in place for it to be easily affordable and within easy reach of all our farmers. So that is just one of them, ensuring easy access and cheap access, and that is what we are working towards. But the key thing I would like to point out our emphasis in Ministry of Agriculture currently is trying to think of how do we have the complete cycle, and we are not just thinking about production, because there is no justification for production, for investment, if we can't give the benefits, and that is the market. If the market quickly exists, all these stakeholders that we are talking about financing, the private, the PPPs, it will become very easy if the markets are guaranteed. How do we guarantee the market? We are trying to ensure that we promote investments in post-harvest handling facilities, agro-processing opportunities and the facilities, and access to, of course, finance, and encouraging insurance companies to come into play to support what the centenary banks and housing finance banks of this world are doing. We are also trying to work with other partners. I'll give a small example. I saw a representative of JICA in the house. Now, when you work on an irrigation program with JICA, you realize that there's a lot more we can learn from how things are being done in other environments. And you realize that the facilities which you're putting up, the farmers have better education, the capacities have been developed, the choices that they make, and the enterprises that they select, both off-season and on-season, depending on the major enterprise that has been selected, is done really, really well. And we could pick a leaf and adopt the good practices from other areas where it is due. For now, that's what I could highlight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me get back to Ministry of Finance, because we continue to talk about finance. And I'll also ask Davis and Shartleff later on how you think we can be able to bring the price down. But to Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mgaga, you earlier on talked about issues, for example, around carbon markets. What more other ways do you think we can be able to design to bring down the cost, but also be able to amass as much finances to push down to the smallholder farmers?
Thank you so much. In terms of government programs, I think it starts with the agencies, the government agencies here, prioritizing irrigation as part of their overall budgets. Because the Ministry of Finance aggregates what water and agriculture give us. So if they prioritize irrigation, we shall also prioritize. But obviously, as I said, as part of the tenfold growth strategy, we have agro-industrialization, and by default, we have to actually avail more financing, and we are looking out for good projects under that program, and it is deliberate. I can speak to the management of the Ministry of Finance, at least to that. Now, innovation, in terms of financing, obviously I talked about carbon markets, but at a government level, at a public financing level, we also have now new instruments that we want to deploy on the climate finance side. We're looking at bringing in green bonds that obviously have guarantees from like the World Bank, costs that can come to maybe 3% on a dollar, which can actually be now reinvested as part of the budget towards these growth drivers. We're also looking at opportunities for like debt for climate swaps, where investments can be tagged to drivers of availability of water, like the wetlands I talked about, restoring ecosystems, and a number of those that actually now feed back into irrigation. So these are things, and we're also designing specialized financing that are triggered by disbursement indicators that are tagged to how is government actually developing more irrigation, what is the coverage. So we are trying to do those to drive ourselves towards what my brother talked about, that what did he say? That irrigation should be now what? Should be a lifestyle.
Yes.
So we can only do that if we also put in place policy conditions that are actually going to drive us towards that. And with our financials, if we do this, then I think more is going to come. And then the other one that I've also, we are trying to push as a Ministry of Finance and the Climate Finance Unit is how do we bring in incentives that are going to help people like David and Shatlift to actually bring the cost down. We know we have been having, exemptions on solar, but specific parts. Now we need to be innovative because the reason why we don't extend the exemptions to other parts of the irrigation system is because they can be used elsewhere. Yeah. But if we have integrated systems, then where you are sure that this can only be used for irrigation, then it is easier for government to say, yes, let's exempt this bit. So we have to work with our partners, the private sector, to innovatively find out how do we design these systems that can actually be used to bring down the cost by bringing in the exemptions that they require for the prices to go down. But as long as those parts cannot be used elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very good one, but it's also a catch. It's a catch situation. But let me come back to Britain. On affordability still, because it's very, very important. And picking up from what Mr. Mugaga has said, what have you seen work in other countries? I mean, 80 years of existence for Davis and Shatliff is no mean feat. So what have you seen work elsewhere that could also be adopted in Uganda to help bring down the cost? Because currently we're speaking in millions of shillings for a smallholder farmer.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy he hinted on exemption as he was talking about it, as actually noting it down. Part of the drivers for these high costs of irrigation equipment is the tax. For example, he talked about solar-powered, solar water pumping systems or solar irrigation systems. You realize there are specific products that are known as irrigation products by URA, and those, to be honest, the government has done enough about that. They have exempted them from being taxed. However, for example, for the systems that we design for the smallholder farmers, like the sprinkler kits, the engine-powered sprinkler kits, realize out of that whole package, it is only one product that is termed as irrigation, which is the sprinkler, because the sprinkler cannot be used to do anything else apart from irrigation. Because a kit has hoses, has an engine pump, and other connectors, accessories, which they, like he said, could be used for something else. So they are.
Is it that it's the reality, or it's just a perception that you would want to engage government on?
Yeah, we surely would. And maybe the best approach for this would be, like he said, to ensure that these are not used for something else. We make sure that they are indeed kits. So, but then the problem comes that those kits are only, they are only engineered when they reach here, because they come in different parts, and a supplier for the engine pump is different from a supplier for the hoses. So when they reach here, they've already been taxed, and you have to put them together to form a kit. So maybe we need to come up with a mechanism on how best this could be addressed in terms of if we could do them as kits, and maybe there is some follow-up that could be done. Because to be honest, the tax, for example, on a 1 acre kit could go up around 800,000. If that is scrapped off, that greatly reduces the cost of this equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Government would also be looking at the fact that you could put it as a kit, then I will disassemble and be able to use the other parts in other means. And yes, it was meant for irrigation. So, like I said, it's a catch-22 conversation, but I am going to be bringing this conversation to the audience in a bit, so I'll request that I get some handheld mics to ease that. But let me first ask, as I come through, to the Ministry of Water and Environment. The World Bank Country Climate Development Report actually also speaks to increasing irrigation, but without depleting the water sources, because then water stress could become another disaster that we are dealing with. So how are you as a as a ministry, dealing in what limits and catchment restoration plans you are having to prevent what could be water stress in the near future? I'm imagining if we increase from 3.5 smallholders who are doing irrigation to about maybe 60%, will we be able to catch up with the demand versus the water stress that could be happening?
Thank you for that. One advantage we have as a country is our abundant water resources. Even at current abstraction rates, we are significantly below 1% of existing water resources. But even with that, the ministry has a number of mechanisms to ensure that this resource isn't overexploited. We have, for instance, laws on the Water Act which guide on abstraction of water. So for example, because water is a resource owned by the government, so if you want to abstract, for instance, from a river, you're required to apply for an abstraction permit, and then we look at what is sustainable within that river basin or that catchment, and we evaluate and then assign, such that we don't have an unequal abstraction of water. Then to deal with the environment and sustainability, we have laws on the use of wetlands in particular, amongst other laws, but also as a ministry we are doing a lot to protect the environment, to ensure sustainable use of these resources, because they have a knock-on effect on the amount of water available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very great. As I get to the audience, I hope we do have our mics ready. Let me just have one to Engineer Wanolebo. I was thinking out loud, and I am thinking how we can be able to, we normally have this statement in Uganda, gifted by nature. Yes, definitely. In one season, you will find a particular region is flooding in one of the seasons. In the next season, the same region has famine or is stressed. And I'm thinking, how are we thinking out differently to be able to tap that runoff water that comes every rainy season? Instead of having the floods, we are probably catching it up somewhere, and we can be able to use it in the dry season. Are we thinking in those ways?
Yeah, thank you very much. You asked a question which I think you actually had a very good answer to. Most of the interventions we are doing, we are not thinking of course, irrigation has to have a source.
Yes.
And the floods that you're talking about don't tell you when they are coming.
Sure.
So we have to decide how to control that. Most of the water storage facilities we are doing with our colleagues, Ministry of Water and Environment, actually the first objective is to control floods. Then take advantage of the interventions you've done to control floods to utilize the water which you've controlled. So, we are using our technical expertise to try to ensure that we don't let nature control us, but we control it. When we do dams, valley tanks, and other storage infrastructure, we are actually trapping water, which in most cases would be flooding other areas or those areas. So we direct it where to go, and we keep it and use it when we need it in those dry spells.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very perfect. I'll now turn to the audience. I will be getting back to the panelists at a later stage. Kindly requesting that I can be able to have the mic. We do have a sanitizer. Please remember to use that. As I said, we are on high alert. Can I have some hands up for, yes, oh, yes, let's start from the back and then come to the front here.
Thank you very much. My name is Alex Mandolo. I am the sector head for food and agriculture at DFC Bank. And thank you for the good panel discussion. I think for me, in addition to what has been said here, I feel like we need to start with the demand, the market.
Okay.
Once the markets are sorted and there is value for money, the smallholder farmers will do whatever it takes to afford the irrigation system. We've seen it in some areas in central here. People are irrigating as far as Nakati because the demand is there and they have aligned to get that. And part of that would then be our government helping us to open up protocols to export destinations that then will give us value for money, and then we can work backwards. Last one is on the what have we done, for example, on making sure that the cost of financing goes down. Majority of our smallhold farmers usually would not hold collateral. So as soon as the financial institutions realize that they can take these irrigation kits as collateral and find mechanisms of how they can trace and also be able to get support from the likes of Davis and Shatleaf for repossessions or transfer to other farmers, then that means that they will be able to consider that as asset financing, and it's something we're doing at DFCU. When you come to buy a pump, that pump forms the collateral, so you don't need to get a land title. Last one is for us to continue with the blended finance agenda, because some of these equipments, their return payback period is usually longer. To benefit from a dam, you have to use it for some years, and yet our credit life in Uganda is usually shorter. I would like to conclude by saying the very last one in the long term that will enable us as Uganda cross-cut our edges in agriculture is when we go block farming and regional, I could call it what? Prioritization according to regions. Because our country is smaller and we can't settle everywhere and farm from everywhere. We then go into policy formulation where we could have designated farming areas, designated residential areas. These are things that have helped some countries like Netherlands that are actually 5 times smaller than Uganda, but they are key exporters. So until we have that sorted, we might have a long way as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I like that you do what we said earlier, close book of lamentations and get to acts. Let's move the mic a little bit closer. Yes, right over there. And then we'll get to the lady and back to the front table.
Yeah, Joshua Kwanya is my name, and I work for Asareka. Yeah, thank you. I would like to thank EPRC for inviting us to this forum. And the discussions are really interesting. There is need to have, in my observation, the different actors, across the sectors and across the stakeholder categories. The state, the civil society, the NGOs, the government, to talk together with the private sector. But then is this forum, where is this forum? Is it only happening today and here, or there is somewhere where these stakeholders meet to be able to find solutions to this challenge?
Okay. I think that goes straight to EPRC. We'll be getting the answers. The lady, back to this table and back to the table as well. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mildred and panelists. My name is Membo Charity Namala from KfW. KfW is a German development bank. We work a lot with the Ministry of Water, and the last question you had talked about around the floods, and then sometimes we have no water. KfW has interventions with the Ministry of Water. Currently, we have invested 20 million euros in Karamoja for water storage infrastructure, and that's for, though they are not doing irrigation, I know, because Karamoja is really cattle keeping. But we have supported, because we know irrigation cannot happen before we have a water source, and I think he talked about that. It is very expensive for you to do irrigation without a water source. So at KfW, we have started from water storage infrastructures. So we are working with the government to have 2 earth dams around 3 million cubic meters in Karamoja. I think that's south and northern Karamoja. I'm from the financial sector, so I'm not so sure about the actual numbers, but my colleagues in MWE, I think, are aware. So we have that support, but also we have done a feasibility study for another large water scale infrastructure in Arua, and that will serve about 6 districts. So as KFW in this, because water for production, I think there's a very high target. So as KFW or the German Development Corporation, we are contributing to that, because we know having water or water source, before you even go into irrigation, like you said, the source of water can really influence the cost of irrigation. So we are putting investment in that, and in Arua, I think we're going to do a grant of 40 million euros for that large-scale water harvesting infrastructure. So we are looking at harvesting rainwater, preserve it, and then it can be used for irrigation, also consumption, because we know beyond irrigation also there's water for production, but also consumption. Because if someone doesn't have water for consumption, then they'll not really have water for irrigation. Then one of the other interventions I think we are working on with the government through Ministry of Finance is the lines of credit. And we've seen a lot of farmers accessing concessional loans to access irrigation. So we are happy about this, and hopefully for our new project in Arua, irrigation could be something that we can tag along, since we are still finalizing the feasibility for this project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mebo. And meanwhile, as the mic passes on, we were joined by Dr. Sarah Sewanyana, who was not earlier with us, the Executive Director of EPRC. Thank you so much for making time, ma'am. And also for those who came in a little later, we are with the Resident Coordinator of the United Nations, Mr. Leonard Zulu. Thank you so much for as well sparing time to be with us. Let's cross back. The mic has moved to, let's get first to this table here, and then we get back to the table where Mebo is seated. There are 2 hands over there.
Thank you so much, Mildred. I am Dr. Dixon Malunda. I'm a senior researcher with the National Planning Authority. Now, I would thank you for this discussion, but there's something that I saw when Dr. Christian was presenting. The areas that had experienced a drought and the areas that had not experienced a drought, yes, there was these variations, but productivity was decreasing in both over time. And what does that tell you for what you put up there? There should be more to the irrigation story than financing. So what I'm trying to make a point, one, I also want to go back to the theme, investing in irrigation to build a climate resilient smallholder farmer. Sometimes when we're having these discussions, they're up there, and we're talking about a smallholder farmer. Those ones, those pictures are what I think about. Now, what am I saying? We have had this conversation, and a few things were talked about, including the market, but also the soils. I think if we have this discussion in isolation, we may be missing the point. Smallholder farmers are rational. If they are going to invest in irrigation, sometimes we think about these and we think they're not rational. They'll calculate what is the additional cost. If I invest in this, what they are rational. The people we're talking for, they think for themselves. So what am I saying? We have to have a more broader discussion, because I am from NPA. We look at integrated. People have talked about zoning places, reduce costs of supplying people with water. But we also have to talk about the soil fertility story. The soils are tired, and we've used this smallholder for a long time. We get funding, but have we solved their problem? The soils are tired. We need to replenish. You can't, because if you continue watering the soils, you'll just leach them. Okay? So we can't have this discussion of irrigation in isolation. We should talk about the soils. We should talk about the markets. We should talk about the storage facilities if we're to make this sustainable. For the guy we're talking about, the smallholder farm beyond the English.
Okay.
I submit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love that. It's a very good conversation, because there's always been the discussion of, I want to plant this, but are you supposed to plant it in that place or in another? Or have you done a soil test to know which soil nutrients are missing that you need to add? Let's first get to the table here at the front. There are 2 hands that I need to have, and then I will move on. I will get back. Yes, we are having an intensive conversation here. We may, of course, go off with television, but we need to continue with this conversation because it is required. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Joseph Mdiope. I work with FAO as the crop production specialist. I was not going to speak, but when I looked at that picture, it told me a lot of issues. First of all, I don't know whether the design is gender sensitive. Then I looked at the water, and picking it from the previous speaker, I said, if this is the way the farmers are really doing the irrigation, what about the solanization? With the time, we are going to have issues to do with the soils, and you find that it will be more costly. The farmer will have to apply issues like DAP, other soil amendments to correct the soil. And then you are compacting the soil. But beyond that, are we building the capacity of even the extension workers to understand the crop water requirements? It is very critical because we also need to understand the water infiltration rates, water holding capacities. All those are really critical. Evapotranspiration. You go to a scheme like a Doho, and it is in blocks, but you find that in one area the evapotranspiration is higher than in the other, and yet you are releasing water at the same rate. And then you find that in some months the evapotranspiration rate is very high, but you are really releasing the same amount of water. At the end of it, this definitely will affect the crop yields, will bring the runoff, the agrochemicals. So I think, and then the most important thing is we normally do these things for export, but in actual sense, how much of the virtual water are you exporting? You are exporting a lot, you are extracting a lot, and when you extract a lot, with the time, the energy you are using to get the water becomes quite expensive.
Okay.
So we don't want to really use irrigation to cause other vagaries by exporting a lot of the virtual water. And at the end of it, if we build the capacity building, I strongly believe we should now need to tag on paying for the water. I don't know how that can be, but it can stimulate now the farmers understanding that this water needs to be costed. Thank you.
Okay, very, very interesting. Yes, over to you, neighbor. We're exporting virtual water. I hope many of us had paid attention to that. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mildred, the moderator, and EPRC for this very important gathering. My name is Emmanuel Chimbo, Head of Planning, Minister of Local Government. I think the gist of the matter here is smallholder farmer and irrigation. We have seen in one of the slides the traditional irrigation schemes. I tried to look at the figures, and I think among the biggest is Doho with 1,000 hectares, 4 square miles. 4 square miles are equivalent to maybe my village, not even a quarter of a parish, because now we are in parishes, we talk about parishes. And there we have that very big scheme. I don't know whether the feasibility study that we undertaken would justify having that scheme. That is what is coming out of the investment that was made in that scheme, vis-a-vis the micro, small scale irrigation interventions or initiatives that would benefit so many farmers. Therefore, as a practitioner, and luckily I also benefited from U-Gift because I'm a farmer, I realize that the more we invest in small scale, small scale, the better for the farmers. But again, midway said, where is the source of water? I have 2 different gardens, and one of them doesn't have a source.
Right. Yeah.
Nexus Green wanted to give me water, and they said, do you have a source? I said, I don't have. But it doesn't mean that there is no water in that place.
Yes.
So what are we looking at? And again, as you rightly said, so many places don't have the source, but water is there. And that's why now Minister of Water, who are mandated to know where water is, they are the ones who know where water is, should work closely with the Minister of Agriculture and guide on the issues we raised of water table, if we do drilling, what problems are we likely to create. So it is important that we go small, because so many from the community where I come from don't have the source of water. They don't have, and therefore they cannot benefit from UGIFT. They cannot benefit from Nexus Green, which are advocating for small irrigation. So large scale vis-a-vis small scale. I would go small scale, benefit more farmers. If you take the cost one time slightly before I left agriculture, there was a dam constructed at a cost of around 72 billion. If that could be, I don't know, I think the acreage was around 500 hectares. If that could benefit the many farmers in coffee, in other enterprises, I know the benefit would be much higher than in one place. The second one, unfortunately, the World Bank is not here, she has left. She said we should build on resilient financing mechanisms, but also reduce on subsidies. Well, that is good. But it is very expensive. I've said I'm a practitioner, so I'm not an ordinary farmer. But I realized when I was getting the UGIFT, I felt it. Me at my capacity, I felt it. Now, what about these ordinary farmers? The smallholder, they cannot afford. So, for now, let's subsidize these people. I know they cannot afford. I know them. I know the community where I come from. They are coffee farmers. They cannot afford, because I felt, and I'm not ordinary. So we need to look into that. And the last one is now the issue of extension has come out almost everywhere.
Yes.
It has been mentioned that it's lacking. My friend Francis didn't mention this. The number of extension workers we have are definitely are very few. Talk of 4,200. Vis-a-vis the requirement of over 10,000, it is so small. But again, we have seen that they are not being, again, they are not, they will tell you they are not facilitated, they cannot hit the farmers, and these are the challenges now we are encountering. That, yes, it's talking about irrigation there, but how is it supposed to be applied? It is a problem. Who is guiding the farmers to do it? Where we are talking about one extension worker to handle 2,000, 1,800 farmers or farming households. Who is going to support the farmers? So all this needs to be comprehensively appreciated. Let's have a holistic approach of looking at things rather than piecemeal way of doing things.
Thank you.
And that's why we brought the program approach, which we needed to continue supporting to ensure that these things add up. Otherwise, we are still me water, me agriculture, me local government, and then we don't get the gist of this, why we introduce the program approach. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will allow the mic to move to the middle table right there, the gentleman. And I love when you talked about the program approach. I always ask, when they go to Parliament where there's still sector committees, what happens? You plan in programs, then it is dissected at sectoral committees in Parliament. Something to ponder upon as well, probably, on the government side. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Okelo Thomas. I'm the head of production department, Lira District Local Government. I just want to re-emphasize on a few things, but also bring out some new things on the floor. The first one I want to re-emphasize. I'm also a farmer. I also co-funded and also felt the pain. I'm also not an ordinary farmer.
You also felt it?
I also felt it.
Okay.
So the thing is, there's need to bring down the co-funding obligation for farmers. It should go to either 10% or below. That co-funding for each farmer is about 20 million for gift, and 25% is about 5 million shillings. My farmers are among those ones who are very poor. So this irrigation ends up with other group of people. And for us, we also fear sending back money. We shall be penalized by Ministry of Agriculture and Finance.
Yes.
So we end up giving this irrigation not to smallholder farmers, to other farmers, which is very dangerous. So I think we should revise and make sure we bring down the co-funding obligation to less than %. Then we move to 12%, just like that, but not giving 25%. It will not work. Big politicians, big takeover officers are the ones who are going to benefit, not smallholder farmers. Hope it is taken.
Very
Thank
interesting.
You. Then two, we have in the structure of our local government, we have senior agricultural engineer at district level. And funds is provided for recruiting only one senior agricultural engineer. And many districts don't have. But in Lira, we have one senior agricultural engineer. I'm requesting the ministry, finance, agriculture, public service, to consider revising the structure so that we recruit agricultural engineer who will then be promoted to senior agricultural engineer. Agricultural engineer can be at a constituency level. Then who can now be promoted to senior agricultural engineer. But we have only one senior agricultural engineer who is doing all these things. He cannot build the capacity of all these farmers. It's very difficult.
Okay.
And it's not work.
Thank you,
Next,
Mr. Okello. As you conclude,
the last
please.
one, yeah.
Yes, yes.
This one is going to my brother of water. I have Oluwen irrigation scheme. In Lira, it is called Itekokile. But initially, it was Oluwen, which is in Lira and Dokolo. But now that part which is remaining with Lira is called Itekokile. I appreciate the fact that government put in over 50 billion shillings. But now, because of some few things, vandalism and what have you, the place is not working, it's not functional. But we have a very big excavator in our regional office of Lira. We had meetings and meetings. So I'm requesting that you help us instruct the regional office of Lira to go and support the farmers. We have more than 1,800 farmers in Uluwen there. And recently, COIPA, the current project, supported us with a lot of seeds. But now the place is flooded. They cannot plant. So kindly request you to help us. Instruct your people at regional level to support our farmers using the excavator, which is already there, to open up the water canals so that the farmers can access their farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okello. You've opened a can of worms, but spoken about the realities that in the end, because of how much is needed, this will not go to the smallholder farmer that we're targeting. It will go to another type of person who can be able to afford the co-funding percentage. And then, unfortunately, the whole idea of as to why this was introduced goes to waste. But these are realities. And I agree with you when you talk about fearing to return the money, because then next you will not be given that very amount of money because you didn't utilize it after all. Let's move a little bit to the back, yes, to the extreme back, and then we'll keep coming back forward.
Thank you so much, Mildred. My name is Dr. Brian Serunjoji. I'm a research fellow at the Economic Policy Research Center. I want to respond a comment that came in from Joshua of Asereka on how are we going to be able to bring together the different stakeholders and the ecosystem to make sure that there's sustainable investment for smaller holder irrigation systems. Currently at the Economic Policy Research Center, we are undertaking a study to understand how the farmer-led irrigation development has worked. Right now, we are developing evidence. We've been moving across the country, but the ultimate objective is to bring together different stakeholders to have a strategy, a sustainable financing strategy. And after development of this evidence, we are going to call the different stakeholders. The local government, because this micro irrigation scheme is being operated through the local government. We want to bring on the private sector, because the question that Christine raised is very pertinent. What is the financing model that works? Right now, government is using partial subsidies, which we think are not sustainable. So we want to see how can we crowd in the private sector. We are going to call financing institutions. We are going to call irrigation equipment suppliers, and I'm happy Davis and Shatcliffe is here. We will even be contacting them. We are going to be calling the cultural extension departments, the development partners. As Christine was presenting, we saw that there are different, she was saying that our irrigation financing is donor-driven. So the ultimate objective, and most of you here will be contacting you as we develop this strategy. So as far as the different things that we're going to look at, the whole entire ecosystem of irrigation, from farm awareness to farm extension, to operation and maintenance, to financing, to market systems development, because as the World Bank stated rightly, the farmers are rational and they're not going to invest in irrigation development if they don't have markets for their produce. And then we are going to look also at issues of extension, because they are key, operation and maintenance, having technicians at the local government. So ultimately, besides this workshop, EPRC will be reaching out for this financing strategy to develop farmer-led irrigation development in Uganda. I wanted to respond to Joshua's comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian. Let me have about 2-3 get to the panel to respond to some of those that have been raised, and then we'll be able to come back. I'll move to this side because there's been a lot of dominance. I don't want to be seen as a person who is not fair. So let's move the microphone here, okay? Right there behind you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Joseph Oke from Ministry of Agriculture, from the Directorate of Agriculture Extension. I'm going to just give a brief comment in maybe a minute or so. What is gathering us here, at the core of what we are all doing, is sustainable adoption. And as I get to that, I want to make it clear to us that whenever we talk about adoption in extension, many of us have had the mindset that adoption is an instant when the farmer gets this input or this item. And that is not so. Adoption is not just merely receiving the item today. If I got something today, it does not mean I've adopted it. Because adoption has an aspect of sustainability. And that is where extension comes in key. Many times we imagine that once we give people so many things today, right now, they have adopted. But if they had adopted, we should have seen the impact long term. But we do not see it. So as government, as non-state actors, as all the other stakeholders, whenever we give out things and people receive them, we call that adoption. That's not adoption. That's just reception of what you're doing. So that is what relates, and that is what is very, very key when we have the conversation on extension. So I just want to highlight a few things in probably 45 seconds, if the moderator will allow. It will take 45 seconds, now 44. So
now 42.
Yes. So when we talk about adoption being a process, not an instance, in extension we look at three aspects. We just choose to make them an acronym. K standing for knowledge. The cognitive knowledge must be there. And that's why we focus on so much. Cognitive knowledge, mental understanding of the item, the classroom knowledge of this machine that I'm giving you, or this seedling, the classroom knowledge, this is this variety and all that. And we imagine that is enough to mentally convince the farmer to take it up. Because it makes logical sense, right? Wrong. That is not where adoption ends. Then we have to continue to the skill, the hands-on. How much, after you have told somebody the head knowledge of this aspect, how much of the skill, the doing, Because your words alone will not foster that adoption. Your words may make somebody receive the items. How about the doing aspect? Whenever we're planning these engagements and things which have to do with long-term utilization. How about the skilling aspect of doing these things? We also have to consider it, the K, the S. Now the A, which is very important, which we usually ignore, which has to do with the attitudes. Now under that KS, the A stands to, it can be attitudes, you can call it emotions, you can call it mindset, but at the core of the heart of the issue is where somebody has to own it. You own up things, believe it or not, you own up things from the heart level. I'm talking now philosophical or psychological. You own it from the heart level. So if I come to you as a group of farmers, how do I speak to your intellectual, I speak to your skill, but I also speak to your the attitude, emotional aspect. That's now where we have to consider things like extension methodologies of the people that are engaging in many of these things. Do they understand extension, or I'm just knowledgeable? I know a lot about bacteria and about botanical names, but I have to be trained on extension methods like issues of using of demonstrations, issues of using of farmer field schools. Many of us have thought that if I just take a farmer to a demonstration plot today and I teach him something, that's a farmer's field school, right? Wrong. A farmer field school is a process and a time which is scheduled throughout the production season so that he appreciates and understands and learns together with me. Farmer to farmer peer learning, adult techniques of adoption, communication skills, all this tying together in adoption strategies that must be integrated in many of these things. Otherwise, we shall just give items, and because this time we gave 50, and people took all the 50, we say it's 100% adoption. 2 years down the road, none of them are functional, none of them are being used.
Oh, sure.
So we need to sit and have that conversation and appreciate extension and for what it is, and the big part it plays in all this game of uptaking these things. A lot has been said. Maybe I don't know where the question mark is, but we shall pick on from there.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for that. I'll get back to my panel. I have a hand here that's been up for a very long time, and then we'll get to the back. So let's have the three get to the panel, and then I'll start from.
Okay, thank you, Mildred. My name is Dr. Edmund Masime. I'm a lecturer at Mackay University, in the School of Engineering. When someone talked about those pictures and wondered why do we have to do it that way. And I wanted us to focus the discussion. Today we are talking about irrigation. And maybe next time we shall talk about soil fertility and markets. First of all, when you do what she's doing there, you're suffocating the pump. Okay? And before you know it, the pump will fail. Now, Engineer Okamia talked about having spare parts for these pumps to make the system sustainable, right? And he said that we need to have this as a lifestyle for Uganda. And the only way to solve these problems is to have local development of these systems here in Uganda. Because once I do that, then I'm able to have spare parts for these pumps, and so they can easily be maintained and we use them continuously. What we have done in Mackay University, we have actually had a groundbreaking innovation where we have developed a solar water pump. Now, this pump has been built 100%, including all its parts. Now, this pump is actually a submersible water pump, which Mr. Brisson says is very expensive compared to the petrol engine pumps. And I think this is where we need to be focusing our discussion in how to make these systems more affordable. Because he says that for you to be able to, we can't afford to buy these systems here as smallholder farmers. I don't know how much, by the way, that system is. He says that if you pay 25%, that's about 20 million. When I put in some mathematics here, I see that that system costs 80 million in total from the donor himself. If you pay 15%, he says 15%, then the farmer pays 5 million, meaning that the cost of the system is 33 million, which is really way expensive. But we believe that if we can localize manufacturing of these systems here, we can significantly reduce the cost of these technologies. And so, what should policy really focus on if we are to have that as a solution? We need to support local manufacturing by putting policy initiatives to encourage local manufacturers. For example, what we have done, we import some of the materials to make this pump, but all these are being taxed. So if we can reduce the taxation, then we can have these systems really more affordable to the local communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tumusime. Let's move the two on your table. We go to Cleto behind, and then we'll first get back to the panel.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Karanzi. I work with NARO, and I'm happy to be here. And for sure, I'm interested in the research aspects of what we are discussing, which is seemingly lacking. Government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, came up with priority crops. And I think currently there are about 12 priority crops in the country. And we are missing which of these priority crops are more climate vulnerable, so that we tailor our efforts when we are investing in these irrigation technologies, and also when we are scaling our interventions. And of course, we seem to be talking about a smallholder without defining who a smallholder is. There are typologies of smallholders based on gender, based on land size, and so on and so forth. So when we are talking about who we are targeting, we must be, very specific. Who is not adopting, we must be very specific so that we come up with clear interventions on how to reach out to the most vulnerable smallholder farmer. And as we are doing our work, you also notice that some farmers indeed took up these irrigation technologies, but later on they abandoned. And the question is, why are they abandoning? Somebody was talking about adoption, and I entirely agree with you. So is there a yield gap that is not really being met? I mean, like somebody mentioned that a smallholder farmer is rational. They want to see that when I invest in this, the increment in yield is actually catering for the cost and much more. Do we do this kind of studies to find out how the irrigation intervention is actually boosting the yield? Or a farmer may notice that there is actually no big difference, and it is better for me to fall back to my business as usual than the business unusual. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A good one there to do the analysis of adoption versus the increase in yield or whatever needs to be done. I think Maif is taking that very seriously. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Engineer Anamama Geoffrey. I'm a senior agricultural engineer of Moroto District. With the introduction of micro-scale irrigation in Moroto, it has triggered the mindset. People are now transitioning from pastoralism to agro-pastoralism. But we have two challenges. One is the availability of the water. Over 60% of the installations, we are using groundwater, the community boreholes. And the remaining 40%, we are relying on surface water, and it is now becoming a challenge it's even becoming risky to invest in dams because of recent, the 2.3 billion Kobebe Dam went dry because of the unavoidable development projects in the catchment, the roads which divert the water. Our request is that since groundwater is proving more reliable, at least a study should be done on the availability and stability of groundwater for irrigated agriculture within the Moroto region or Karamoja region. Secondly, it's the issue of co-funding. Very many residents are in need of these schemes, but the poverty levels are high. I wish Karamoja region can be taken as a special case so that this co-funding can even reduce to 5% for us to realize a proper transition to fully agro-pastoralism. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Just one more, right behind Cleto. Right there. Yes, the gentleman on your right. And then we'll come to the panel a bit and then do one more round. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mildred, and thank you, everyone, for this space. My name is James Cleto Mumbere, and I work for the Participatory Ecological Land Use Management, Pelham, Uganda, which is CSO, and averagely I've not had many voices from the CSO world in this room. I've had government, the district, and all that. Well done. From our side, or from our space, you want to thank the presenter, Dr. Christine. You did a good job, except that I think I still missed a part. After all that you presented, I would have loved to hear what is the cost of inaction. If all that you presented, okay, well, it's good, but what if nothing is done? Where are we going? And as the presentations went on and the various speakers made their contributions, for me, I had this to note. As we continue to wait on government, development actors, what are we going to be doing in the interim? The precurrent speaker has just mentioned about the catchment distractions. Shall we continue at least to promote the nature-based solutions? And this probably we also have to harness catchment protection in the interim, at least to sustainably, take on what is existent, because at least there is something the farmers are doing. Until we get those irrigation financing, modalities and whatever, what is it that we must do? And then this brings me to the idea of our commitments as a country. We recently hosted CADAP in Kampala. There are various commitments that were made. And if I refer to the previous CADAP in Malabo, where we committed about, many countries signed for 10% of their national budgets being committed to agriculture. How far we? I don't know from, probably I will hear that from my brother Julius Mukunda, if we have even gotten to at least 5% as Uganda. So I don't know where we are, because we may be singing a song, maybe we are starting from the last stanza. And as I come to a close, apparently Uganda looks to be prioritizing parish development model. And this is a vehicle now taking us to the smallholder farmer. Yes. And in that, I seem to realize that there was no provision for irrigation technologies or irrigation financing. And here I come with a message that I think it is right and fitting if we advocate for community irrigation schemes. Because if we intend to target individual smallholder farmers, it might be a long journey. But
for instance, why don't we then prioritize having parish level irrigation schemes if we're already implementing the parish model, parish development model? And that would also inform government to come up with a cooperative irrigation investments. If we are talking about PDM circles, maybe those PDM circles should have an investment arm that caters for, irrigation investments for community irrigation.
Okay.
And as I conclude, there is that huge element that I think the senior productions officer for LIRA talked about. And for me, I'll term it as systems blindness. Systems blindness in the sense that lots of investments from government, from development partners are invested in the water sector. But because of vandalism and many other aspects, you find a huge investment of 2 billion lying idle in one district. When you go to another district, it's also not functional. So you find we have invested lots and lots of money that is not actually giving us any what? So it is the aspect, I'm calling for systems strengthening in this particular sector. And maybe irrigation will also finally have something to achieve at that level.
Thank you.
There is an MP, an Honorable Yeri Apollo Ofono, who mooted an idea, I think sought even leave of parliament, to introduce a private member's bill on rainwater harvesting in the last parliament. I don't know how far that was processed. Maybe it should be a discussion or a debate that needs to come up in the 12th parliament. Otherwise, we need something, a policy directive on rainwater harvesting. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me get slightly to the panel to respond to a few of those that have come through, because many were supplements, and then we will get back for another round, and that will be the very last one. I think let me start with Maif, engineer. There seems to be a lot of pointers to your side and what you think about the conversation so far coming in.
Thank you very much. This is quite exciting. We've been trying to work on an integrated national irrigation development framework with our colleagues, Minister of Water, OPM, local government, and finance. And whatever has been discussed puts that more at the fore. What has been challenges, most of the challenges that have been raised give us an opportunity to turn these challenges into opportunities if we handle it in an integrated way. Let me give an example. We sit as MAIF or Minister of Water and decide that we need a dam in this location. Then we go ahead, we secure, finance gives us money, we secure the funding to carry out the dam, irrespective of where the source of the money is, whether donor or government of Uganda. It is all money of our generation and future generations. And then we go and put up something, and as someone has just mentioned in a last few minutes, we end up realizing that the value, the cost benefit of what we've put in is not worth the money we've spent for that investment. Why? I think we need to agree that it is the scope is too big, we are so far behind, and we need to work together whether we want it or not.
Okay.
These things of talking of separation between MAIF, MWE, and other partners, if we don't agree that first, the most important thing is the farmer, is the enterprise. And all these investments need to come as from a top-down approach, not us sitting up here and deciding that this is what we want. Otherwise, we shall spend a lot more than we need or we have to do that and not achieve the objective that we set out to achieve. So let's determine the demand. Let's establish the market. Let the market be the driving factor. But also that we can have considerations. We can't take Uganda as one whole homogeneous environment. We know that it is not. We shall just be burying our heads in the sand. Okay. We should agree that, okay, cost sharing is actually very good, because inevitably we would own these things better if we're actually paying for them 100% as farmers, as individuals. But because we can't, someone else can help us. But we can structure a way of helping different regions and different groups differently. Thank you.
Well, there was one thing that kept sticking on the extension workers, and I will probably re-echo it again, on whether you as MAIF are deliberately building capacity of these extension workers with the irrigation technology, because it's one thing to have the extension workers, they're not as many as it had clearly been told, but do they also have the information that they require to give to the farmers, especially when it comes to the correlation with irrigation?
Thank you very much. I think someone talked about this. There are efforts that have been made. Just like 6-7 years ago, we didn't have anyone in the district specifically targeting irrigation. Now we have a senior agriculture engineer. Sometimes, as you talked about moving away from lamentations, we first acknowledge that there are steps being done in the right direction. So every district is actually supposed to have a senior agriculture engineer. But someone has already mentioned, and we know it, that it is not sufficient. That if we could have agriculture engineers, because public service is quite interesting. So that aspect really, I found it interesting that you have a position in the district which is at a senior level, like without roots. It is just hanging. Why don't we have, as someone proposed, some agriculture engineers, entry level, then who can transition to a senior agriculture engineer. So efforts are being done. It's not sufficient, but we can do better. But we can also take advantage of the civil society. Most of these organizations working in these water-stressed areas have technical competences that if we worked together, we would support each other and have those outreaches and support to the extension staff that are there. Most of the extension staff are either agronomists, vets, and everything, but it doesn't stop us from working with, for example, Davis and Shatcliffe, as they offered, to have different groups in different districts trained, and also increase the coverage of technicians and artisans. We get local masons, train them in how the irrigation equipment works, how to maintain them, and have the skills nearby. By having them nearby, they become cheaper. But also what I mentioned earlier about enriching, which we are trying to do under the Uganda Climate Smart project, enriching our mechanization centers so that they are a one-stop center for maintenance, for demonstration, for access, and etc.
Thank you. Mr. Mgaga, let me come to you on, because you're from the Ministry of Finance. One of the discussants actually did suggest the local production of some of these pumps because of the expenditure. How much is government supporting in that relation? I want to believe that could be under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. But also, one also talked about the aspect of the co-funding. Is it something that we can relook? Because at the end of the day, we may end up having the recipients not being the target just because of the co-funding percentage, and also because the local governments will fear to return the money at the end of the day.
Maybe let me start with the last question about co-funding. I think the co-funding that was basically under that program was dependent on the size of the irrigation system. Because obviously if you have components that for small systems, then co-financing will go down. But I think there was a certain level of size that would warrant a higher co-financing. Now, if the design of the program was to reach the levels that he was proposing, I don't think a farmer who has 1 acre will need a system that requires 5 million co-financing. I don't think that. So I think we need to now think about redesigning these programs to make sure that we are deliberate about the size of farmer that we are targeting. The design has to be respondent to the coverage that we need. When they were designing that, I think they were looking at that size. That was the lowest, that was the smallest size that they had. And my brother from David and Shadlift, I think, was confirming this. So we need to be deliberate when we're designing these programs to make sure that even when we talk about co-financing, it's commensurate to the size of system that the farmer we are targeting is looking at. Now, as government, obviously, as I said, we have other programs that are targeting farmers, small-scale farmers. And when you go to those, some of them actually are lower in terms of co-financing requirements. And then also, there's also co-financing in this aspect of the financing, where, for example, for the agricultural credit facility, just the markup, the interest that we have brought down is co-financing, because if you went to the market, basically, government is investing to make sure that your cost of capital goes down. So by giving that subsidy, I think we are co-financing indirectly. Maybe we want to see farmers getting some money in their pockets, but we are doing this in different ways depending on the product that we are dealing with, and then also the medium of delivery. So those are things that, like I said, it's work in progress. Now that we have a tenfold growth strategy, these are things that we have to hash out, and the feedback we've got today, I think, enriches some of the strategies that our colleagues from the ministries are looking at. And then also on our side, as we mobilize the climate financing together with a number of partners, I think let's just keep the discussion going on. Colleagues from civil society, this is good feedback for us, and we shall take it up as we design the new program. Now, like for the Nexus Green, the new one, this is feedback that we're going to take up and make sure that we remove those bottlenecks that we are looking at. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Job, we'll come to you on the ministry. There's been conversations around aspects of rainwater harvesting, for example, but there are also issues around adoption of the irrigation systems that we are having. Please take it on.
Thank you. Let me first address the rainwater harvesting. So the Ministry of Water and Environment has a program where we support farmers with strategic reservoirs that are constructed using our equipment through a PPP partnership. Similarly, Ministry of Agriculture has a similar program using their own equipment. So we do have some interventions with regard to rainwater harvesting.
If you could just be explicit about that, how does it work? How do farmers get to engage?
So if you have a farm and you want to construct a reservoir, you come to our regional offices, and then they'll be able to guide you on the steps based on demand assessment. So they'll be able to send a team to your farm. So for example, if you're going to do livestock, or you want to do irrigation, we're able to do that assessment and tell you how big of a system you need, because it depends on the unique characteristics of your farm. If you have a spring, or you may not necessarily have a spring, but there's a seasonal source, and then you can trap that water and provide it to you.
Okay. All right. And you can continue then with the other responses coming in.
Okay.
Yes.
So to do with sustainability of the irrigation systems, Ministry of Water has been implementing the solar-powered water supply and irrigation systems project phase 1, where we're able to develop about 200 irrigation systems. In each of these irrigation systems, we've set up farmer field schools to teach farmers on how to operate these irrigation systems. And then not just the farmers themselves, but in a farmer field school approach, we're able to teach neighboring farmers, to introduce them to irrigation and how to carry this out sustainably. We don't just stop there. We ensure that we provide spare parts for certain crucial implements. We ensure that there are adequate warranties such that even if this equipment fails, the farmers are able to have them replaced sustainably. We've also gone ahead to train extension plumbers who can then fix some of these systems once they break up. Then, if you can allow me to address some of the issues raised, I will start with KFW. We appreciate the effort and the funding that they've provided with the Karamoja Drought Resilience Program. We would also like to, we hope to engage you on the Arua program. With regard to the system in Olweny, the gentleman from Lira local government, thank you for that submission. We shall take note of that. Then it is true that not all farmers will be able to access water or will have a water source. So what we are doing, especially under phase 1 and phase 2 of the solar powered irrigation systems project, we develop groundwater resources, but we do also as a ministry map groundwater resources to see where areas it's sustainable to do this through groundwater interventions, and in areas where it isn't, we are developing bulk water irrigation systems with the support from Ministry of Finance. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Britton. I will take you on before I take the next and last round of questions.
Okay. Thank you. Speaking of irrigation and financing, like a fellow mentioned, to be honest, there is more to the irrigation story than just financing. It takes a lot. There is a lot that has to be done right before before someone acquires the irrigation, because some of the parameters we look at while sizing for an irrigation system start all the way from the crop water requirement, the type of soil, because different types of soils have different water retention capacities, and different types of crops require different amounts of water. So if all this is not done right, then we shall end up with things like secondary salinity, nutrient leaching, and root suffocation, which in turn will become expensive to cure. It's like we are solving a problem to create another problem. So looking at the picture behind me really tells a lot. It's not done like that. There's a right way that it should be done, and it starts all the way from us, the providers for these. We have to train the people who are directly linked to these farmers. And I believe if these extension officers are trained right, there will be the direct link to the right service providers for the right irrigation equipment, because talking of spare parts and all that, it all starts with the quality of the equipment. So I encourage fellow players, different suppliers of irrigation equipment, to also go a step ahead to carry out these trainings, not only to extension farmers, even individual farmers who approach us. Carry out training. How are these machines serviced? There are some services that you don't need to first go and look for a mechanical engineer to help you service a pump. Those are basic things we teach these farmers, and in the long run, these machines will last long. They will benefit from them. That brings us to what Dr. Brian Serunjoji said. Inviting stakeholders together will really help curb this. We'll be able to sit down and discuss on how best these issues can be addressed.
All right, thank you, Britton. Let's have another one. This one will be a little bit more brief. I'll take a few. So Dr. Mkunda is here. Let me have a microphone to Dr. Mkunda. But there was a hand up, I think he left, and then Dr. Mkunda, I will start with the second hand up there.
Thanks, Mildred. Quickly, I think for me, we don't have a question of funding. I don't think in this country we lack money to fund proper irrigation project. And why do I say that? I think our problem is we have an implementation challenge. According to the General's report, it says that 161 billion invested in solar-powered irrigation water systems, only 18% of the planned schemes were completed. 51 letters of credit worth 13 billion remain unutilized for stored irrigation projects. Completed but not used. 14 completed schemes were non-functional, 16 functional ones were not used, and some of the facilities were already being vandalized. My point is I think it's about delivering these services to the right owners. If we are able to say this is an irrigation scheme and these are the right beneficiaries, probably would not be having some of these particular numbers. Yes, we need money, but I think we need more to do with how do we deliver these particular projects. The second one is around taxation. I think taxation in Uganda is a game of chess. Whereas on one side they are saying that they are not going to give tax exemption to the pumps because these pumps are likely to be used by some other people. But at the same time you find that we have tourist vehicles, I don't know if you know them. They have red number plates and indication that they don't pay taxes. We have ambulances, we have cars that have a cooling system. Also those ones are tax exempt. But then, how sure are we that these vehicles are not being used for other purposes? So it's a question of enforcement. I think we can argue better about these equipments if we also look at enforcing to ensure that if you are actually a farmer, then you can actually be tax exempt. But then, who is a farmer? Me and Dennis, you can say we are farmers. I don't know. Who is the farmer in this country? Because if we can't address that, then the beneficiaries would be wrong. Lastly, for me is, I think there's something promoting local production. I think that is one game changer. If we can partner with David and Sharif, if I'm right, to be able to support our young generation, Makerere University, other academic institutions, I think in one way or the other we can be able to have these products produced here, support them, and maybe a component or two, so that at least these products can be affordable. But I can tell you, they're very, very expensive. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. There is a hand right behind here, and then to the extreme, there are two.
Thank you, Mildred. I'm called Ivan Wagaba and lead the sales team at Akvo International. I've been in the house and I've heard from government, NGOs, and I think now I'm coming in also to support my brother because Akvo International does exactly what Davis and Shatcliffe does. Well, we have discussed very important things and there are some that we're trying to not cover on. When we talk about irrigation, we should ask ourselves one question. This irrigation equipment that we're going to give to our smallholder farmers, where does it come from? Someone talked about local manufacturing and how we should have some local manufacturers there. But there is one, I hope you've heard about him, called Innovex. The manufacturing some solar water pumps in the country, in the industrial area. And they're doing well, and their pumps also have a remote monitoring unit where they can access your pump wherever you are. And what are they doing? Now, if you have such pumps locally manufactured from here, and the government is giving a subsidy, and you're supporting of your own, this is how we are going to make the equipment very cheap. I would say Akvo International or Davis and Church will get the things either from India, that is Jane, irrigation equipment. The tax is being imposed on them. By the time they come to Uganda here, we are in business, this is private sector. We need to make money. By the time this equipment reaches the farmer, it is really very expensive. So we have government in the house. So as we are saying, we need to make it more resilient. Our farmers are suffering much. As we say, even the 25% these farmers are paying, it is still too much from their end. And who is purchasing the systems? The people have the money. So our farmers, actually, they want this, but because they can't afford them, that's what's making everything remain remain at a low pace.
Okay.
And the service providers, in this case, we have Davis and Shatliff among the panelists here. He has explained very many good things and how they come up with these technologies and how they give these farmers these systems. The design. Today in the market, we have faced a challenge where even manufacturers themselves from abroad, they have come in to compete with the local manufacturer, with the local or the private sector here. I'm buying a system from India, but the same way comes to Uganda here to do the same. So at the end of the day, we have mixed market of things, and the prices are differing. The price at Davis and Shatliff will never be the same at Aquifer International. Why? I'll explain in very many ways how the item came to the country and what have been imposed on it. So something considering that taxation has really made the service providers, that's from the private sector who are giving this equipment, to also impose to show they survive in this market. And as we talk to our farmers who come, even paying 1 million, it is, you feel the pain of them. They're saying, can't it be like 200,000? But you ask yourself, the person you want to support, even that money he wants to give you, can't actually even get the items from abroad. So can government support local manufacturing? And if most of these things are being manufactured from here, then as they're being given the subsidies, then our farmers, the real farmers that we're looking up to, they're going to get this equipment.
Okay.
But if we keep on the way it is going on, then the big boys in the house will be taking up the things for the smaller farmers.
Sure, sure.
In terms of acreage, actually, smaller farmer, he ranges from about 10 acres, equivalent to about 24 acres, below and below. So if someone who has 10 acres, he's also a smaller farmer. So let's not look on a 1 acre, 2 acres, 3 acres. The last one.
Very briefly, please.
Yes. I want to appreciate Minister of Agriculture. He has explained very many things here. And there is one thing I didn't hear from him. And what is this? A lot of programs have come from the government, but you all see them, most of them in the newspapers. We get some programs coming in, but the implementation gets around and we don't see it coming in through. There is an exciting project, the current one, UCAS something, I'm forgetting the name. Actually, it is one which was going to be a game changer for our farmers, because where the government is also going to go ahead and do for them these water sources. But I believe the engineer in the house, he's cooking something maybe. Soon we're going to see them coming up. So our farmers lack these sources. They want to irrigate. The question is, if you subsidize irrigation, what about acquiring these water sources? Because without the water, you cannot irrigate. Because the water source is the heart of the irrigation system. Without the water, then you can't talk about irrigation. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have 2 hands at the back, and those will almost be coming to the end. The 2, and then the last one right there, and we will be concluding.
Yeah, thanks so much, the presenters. Listening to the panel and the audience, you come to understand that there are 3 areas of interest. My name is Anthony Olimbo. I come from I work for the Climate Action Network Uganda. Somebody was saying civil society is not here. We are here. Yeah, we've been listening and taking notes. Yes, we have challenges from the environmental angle, environment and climate change, the socio-economic, and then the market aspects. But let me deal with the environment and climate. If you look data from, for example, the forestry sector, which has a direct linkage with the availability of water, whether ground or the surface flow, data shows, and all of you know, that we've lost a very high percentage of forest cover. And there are models which predict very well that the more we lose forest cover, the less we have of the groundwater. So the investments you are making in agriculture, I heard the gentleman talk about use of groundwater. If we are not going to invest in the forestry sector or in nature-based solutions, then this investment in irrigation will fail in the longer term. Because it's very clear. Once you have less forest cover, you have less surface water, less groundwater. For now, you have too much flooding because there's a high level of surface runoff. You see it even in Kampala here. So therefore, we need to focus more on the investments in the natural resources sector. Of course, that alone will not solve the problem. The gender question, the socioeconomic. These things for smallholder farmers happen at the household level. Once the family structure is down or is broken, these investments will not work, even when there's market, because things happen at that level. So I wanted to make an appeal that while discussing these matters, we need to take an integrated approach so that we get more sustainable outcomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you to your neighbor. Yes.
Thank you so much, moderator, and thank you so much for our wonderful panelists. My name is Dr. Engineer Paul Ayala. I'm a principal engineer with the Ministry of Agriculture, and I'm also the lead design engineer for Atiak Sugar Irrigation Project. I think my submission is what we need in Uganda is not a question of how many small-scale irrigation we are going to distribute everywhere, but we need an ecosystem where every drop of water is a catalyst for socio-economic transformation. If we view it like that, then we are following the past countries which have succeeded. I personally did my PhD from Japan, and I did research collaboration with Israelites and also in Southeast Asian countries like South Korea. Their approach was exactly different. I'll draw specifically from the Japanese experience, where they developed all their irrigation in the Meiji era, which was in the 17th century. 400 years ago, that is where our economy was around 1930s of today. But their approach was totally very different. One, which I'm going to outline, which is practical to us, is that first, to develop irrigation, it was viewed as a national program, not simply an agricultural program. And the process of fixing water security was priority number one. What Ministry of Water is doing now, they termed as bulk water transfer, is to move water from reliable sources and take to the village gates first, before we start investing in all these application technologies, which most of it falls short because of availability of water, water security. In those economies, they knew where the water from this village is coming from, who controls it, who manages it, before they modernize the farms. The modernization of the farms, application technologies, mechanization, soil and water conservation came when water security was streamlined. Me, I feel that is a very powerful direction for Uganda to do. Uganda is 16% covered by natural water resources. I draw an example. I once did a feasibility guided by my boss, Engineer Francis, to assess the possibility of bulk water transfer from Lake Kyoga to Karamoja. Karamoja is 300 meters below Lake Kyoga. That means water goes by gravity, naturally. Why are we not pulling that off? It would act as a flood control program, but it will almost fix water scarcity in the whole of that area. Then now we go to these other application technologies. Second, the countries which worked fixed institution before the infrastructures. For example, where I stayed most in Japan, there was something called the Mora system. Mora is called a village. A village was structured on how a branch canal is. That becomes a village, which means when you're electing an LC1, it's also the same institution that opens the gate, does water management, and managing the infrastructures. So everything was seamless. Institution. In Uganda, I've participated in almost all these big irrigation projects. We have all failed on one thing. We are not lacking the engineers. We are okay in planning and design. The problem is the institution on the ground. Please, this is a very key strategic direction we must take.
Okay.
Then thirdly,
as you conclude as well.
Yes, sorry. Thirdly, we need to link irrigation to the market. Every drop of water should be translated in some form of economic terms. We should think like that. When a farmer invests in irrigation, he should know that my avocado will be bought somewhere here, or it goes through this channel. Thank you so much. To me, the vision is the bigger the projects which under the regional phase, the lower the cost per hectare, the higher, and we are going to catalyze irrigation at a small scale much faster. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll have just two last ones and we'll close it off. I had a hand earlier there and then here. Okay. Okay, there will be three, but let's make them brief. To the corner, to the gentleman here, and then over. Let's make it as brief as possible.
Thank you, Mildred. I am Engineer William Maso David from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. I am happy that this discussion is happening, but I am worried. Why? Of course, when I saw and read about investing in irrigation and then talking about smallholder farmers, automatically irrigation schemes such as Mobuku, Dohok went out of my head. I thought about somebody who does farming on a small piece of land, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 acres. I've been advised that even 10 acres is smallholder farming. So now, for me, when I think about smallholder farmers and we are discussing them here, except if their representatives are here, we might not get to the point unless we find where they are. And I suspect there are two problems. One is the cost of financing, in case they don't have the money with them. And number two, the cost of technology. I've been hearing about the discussion and I heard a little about energy. But energy is a big component. If we are getting water from anywhere, whether it is surface or underground water, you need the energy to deliver that water somewhere. For example, it may be that you are going to irrigate using gravity, but still you need the energy to deliver it somewhere before gravity carries it to where you want that. So those two, technology of energy to deliver that water is a very big component, and I have had a little discussion about that. When you look at our energy landscape, and the data shows us that only 24% of Ugandan households have access to grid. It means the rest must find a way of having energy, whether by decentralized energy systems or standalone systems.
Okay.
Which in many cases, these, other than the grid, these other energy other methods of delivering energy are very costly. And the financiers have got to find a way of financing these, either by doing it using schemes like energy as a service. For example, I heard about somebody, not in this forum, in another forum, talk about irrigation as a service, whereby somebody can pay for irrigation services the same way we pay for mobile services. Then having technologies which are affordable and environmentally friendly.
As you wrap up.
So for me, if we tackle the issue of reaching out to the smallholder farmers and we get the exact issues, and then at a high level we address the issue of financing and the issue of low or affordable technology, I think we will have achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting one there, especially on the description of who a smallholder farmer is. In the presentation earlier, we had up to 5 hectares. If you multiply hectareage by about 2.5, you know what number you're getting right there. But maybe it's always about the mindset and perception that we think smallholder is 1, 2, 3, and thereabout. So let's have, yes, the mic there, and very lastly, to your neighbor, very briefly as we conclude.
Thank you very much, Madam Presenter. My name is Dr. Inaolet Francis Olaki. I am the District Production Officer for Moroto. I just want to make some few observations and comments. First of all, EPRC, thank you so much for this invitation. I want to talk about dams in Karamoja. I have been in that region for 30 years, right from university. There were sites that were mapped by our colonial masters. And these sites up to today are very, very intact. And these sites were meant for the establishment of what? Of dams. Of course, given that that was a pastoral production area. But sometimes, I don't want to fault anybody, but sometimes we come and say, put the dam here, and then it is put. But if we revisit those sites, and if we are going to do dams in Karamoja, and we revisit those sites, I think we shall not make errors. For example, the collapsed Kobebe Dam, it was holding a capacity of about 2.3 billion liters of water, actually the biggest in the region. There was an error. That dam should not have been put there, but should have been put some distance, about 1 kilometer from there, where there was what? A site established by the colonial masters. I sit in the, I could call that a colonial office. And that colonial office, I see all those files with all that information. And how I wish Minister of Water and Environment and my mother ministry, Minister of Agriculture, you could come and I simply avail you that, that information. Might help us. So I thought I should say that one.
Okay.
2, extension workers. Their capacity to be built in terms of irrigation. I know that every region has what the ZAD is. We all know what a ZAD is, the Zone Agricultural Research Institutes. And for Karamoja, we have one there. I also think that there is a missing link between research, for us, the extension workers, and the farmer. That triangle. Is there something that we can do about that triangle in relation to irrigation? Narrow or research, the farmer, and then the extension workers, or MAIF and us. So if we solve that, we do not need to move from Moroto, Kotido, Karenga to Entebbe for what? For capacity building. We can do that capacity building where? At the ZADI, simplified. Then finally, I liked the brother, the colleague from NPA. We're here to discuss about the smallholder farmer. And for me, as an extension worker for all those years, those are the people I stay with and live with. But apart from lamenting, I think there are some positive stories also.
Okay.
For example, we have in Moroto, we have 29 installation sites for irrigation. But so far, I think we have installed 25. But we have also been able to do some research that for every site that is now functional, how much money has been put there? They have been selling vegetables, cabbages, all kinds of crops. and how much are they what? Earning. So on record, we have a study that we are doing as Moroto to establish what is the impact, socioeconomic impact of the irrigation sites that we have there.
Perfect.
Sometimes not about billions of money, because when we're here, we talk about billions. But a farmer who starts with, say, 5 million, and at the end of the year is harvesting, say, 7 million. I think that's a step ahead.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about big things only, but those little things.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very
Laki.
much.
Thank you very much. Baby steps, of course, as it is said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Very finally will be your neighbor at the front. Very briefly, and we close off. I'll get back to the panel and we conclude.
Yes, thank you, Mildred. My name is Daniel Semwez. I'm an electrical engineer. I work with Davis and Shatley. I would like to thank the panel. I just want to highlight two issues that have already been emphasized by my four colleagues who have spoken about the issue of energy, because every time we talk about transfer of water from one place to another, the key element is the energy you need to transfer that water from that place to another. I happen to do my bachelor's from India, and there is one key thing that I noted from that place when I was studying, and I made sure that when I return back to Uganda, I'm going to put my effort when it comes to irrigation. India is one of the countries that is hit by drought. For those ones who have ever been there, it's really hot, and their drought season is very long. You could receive rain within maybe in a year, like with, about 1 or 2 months. But what I noticed, their production, it could be throughout the year. There is no day you could go in the market and you don't find tomatoes, you don't find vegetables. So what I noticed is that they had developed a water canal. I think my colleague there has talked about it. They had a canal, they used to call it Gujarat Lifeline. It's like, it used to be a canal transferring water and saturating water all over that place. So here, farmers could have water at their farms. So it was an initiative of the government where they developed canals and transfer of water, so each local person could have access to water for irrigation, and that's how they could have production all throughout the year. So to the government, I think if we could address those two issues, energy and then transfer of water from whatever catchment we have put or from whatever place we have the water to the farmer, I think it will make a lot of change. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and I'll close off the audience conversations. Let me get back to my panel. In no particular order, let me start with Davis and Shatley. Okay. Britain, yes. Sorry, not yet. Oh, sorry. That is not yet on. Maybe let me first cross over to the Ministry of Water. Yes, please. Okay. Switched on.
This one is on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
okay.
please.
Thank you for the submissions. Yes, the ministry certainly agrees with some of the positions here, in particular the bulk water transfer. It's true that you will not be able to access water easily, like I've mentioned. So the ministry is developing a number of studies. We already have one that is being funded by African Development Bank in Masindi so where we're targeting over 14,000 hectares under irrigation with a number of small-scale farmers. So we are proceeding with this. We are getting developers on board with the assistance of Ministry of Finance, who is funding some of the studies. With regard to energy, again, yes, we are promoting solar-powered irrigation systems because of the energy savings you get from using solar. Like my colleague here has mentioned, from Ministry of Finance, we only have about 24% access to the grid. I think those are the main issues I have noted.
All right, Britton, back to you.
Yes, still picking up from where my colleague has stopped, I also believe every drop of water should count. And this will come with, like the other colleague talked about, a farmer should really be able to realize that if I invest in irrigation, probably my produce can be sold even on the international market, not just here. So I believe if there is enough funding and structured funding, instead of providing irrigation solutions that are just affordable, but we could just provide solutions that are effective. For example, to be honest, for a coffee farmer doing irrigation maybe on 4 acres, I don't really see why they have to go for sprinkler irrigation. The reason they are going for it is because it is cheaper compared to drip, but drip is the most effective. Someone doing drip irrigation is going to have 2 harvests in a year. And the effectiveness is really practical, and you can see it. You can even do practices like fertigation with drip irrigation. That really all helps in increasing production. You're able to supply, you're able to distribute a fertilizer or a pesticide to the crop through fertigation without, which cannot be done with irrigation methods like sprinkler. So I believe if there is enough funding, then the farmers will go for the most effective, not the most affordable. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I love when you talk about effectiveness and affordability. And that also brings us to the other question that we were talking about, that yes, you're irrigating, but if you're using a hose pipe or using this particular method, at the end of the day, we might have other issues to deal with at a later stage than just the water retention capacity. Engineer Waneloba, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. We have a scenario where all of us want the best for improvement of our production and productivity. And we have different approaches. As I mentioned earlier, I'll say it again, let's make irrigation a lifestyle. But irrigation on its own may not achieve the desired results that we want. So we have to work together as all partners. Know that the beginning starts with the people who are actually doing it, the small-scale farmers. We can have a multi-pronged approach. I don't want us to come from here and say that while we were there, we said we are only going for large, massive infrastructure and bulk water transfer. I want us to know that in the long term, it takes time to develop. It takes time to do the studies. In the meantime, we need to be running. We don't have to wait for only those big, massive structures to come up. And also, value for money. It is much faster to do the small ones. It is more effective to transfer the big ones. So let's look at a multi-pronged approach to these. While we do that, we should think of how to cut down the cost, like we've mentioned all through. If we can support the local industry to start manufacturing locally, that would be a big plus. Let's have so much availability that no one thinks of stealing a component, because they are really readily available and it's not worth stealing. Let's do that, because these are taking place that way because there is a lot of gap. Our future depends on us understanding that irrigation with the soil fertility. When I was growing up, I remember I knew what are the factors of plant growth, and you'd say soil, air, etc. When I grew up, I started realizing that when you're asking about plant growth, you're only thinking about water and nutrients, actually, not soil, because you can do without soil and still plant growth happens. So let's be strategic, work together, and know what we actually need, not what we've been doing. Let's think outside the box and try to take advantage of all the competences we have among stakeholders and do the right thing to ensure that production improves and we produce more and earn more. So the market is important, and we should start from the point of the market. When the market is good, when people can get money, they will even not come. They will not wait for these subsidies. They will do it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Mgaga, over to you.
Thank you so much. Just want to also thank EPRC for inviting us again. I just want to confirm maybe the commitment of government through the Ministry of Finance in providing this financing that is really critical for the discussion that we have today. As I said, if we are to tackle agro-industrialization, we know that irrigation is at the forefront. And as the Ministry of Finance, we are taking irrigation as one of the first priority actions when it comes to agriculture. And as you've heard, our partners here, FD, KFW, all of them are actually focusing their support towards where we think the change is going to be. So we just want to thank you and just to call upon all the stakeholders to give this support and then collaboration to make sure that irrigation is at the forefront of our production agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a round of applause to the panelists. But also a bigger one to the audience engagement, because that's been really, really engaging. I hope we can have more of this. I will request our panel to just please stand up for a group picture. And would be also very good if our executive director joined us on this particular one. Very interesting conversations on extension that have come through that we need to pay attention to. Soil fertility and the need we need to look at energy and use, but also adaptation. Today we have the irrigation system, and they're still working 2 years, 5 years down the road. Then value for money, issues of markets.